Okay, testing. Testing. 1, 2, 3. Okay, we're about to start. Thank you, everyone, for coming. Welcome. I'm Robyn Burstein, Senior Associate Regional Director for the ADL Philadelphia Regional Office. It is my pleasure to be here with you today and to invite Alan Gubernick, our Regional Board Chair, up to say a few words.
Thank you, Robyn. 1 year ago, a violent white supremacist Unite the Right rally in Charlottesville, Virginia, delivered a wake-up call across the country. The explosion of anti-Semitism and racism that fueled the violence gave us a terrifying glimpse of how fast our world can change if we let it. ADL's founders set our mission as stopping the defamation of the Jewish people and securing justice and fair treatment for all. They set out on this mission in 1913. We believed then, as we do today, that a minority can never be safe and equal and free in this country until all minorities are safe. In our CEO's office in New York, right by his desk, is a picture of his predecessor, Ben Epstein, standing in solidarity with Dr. King, Robert Kennedy, and with the NCAACP's Roy Wilkins in the Rose Garden at the White House. At a time when the White House remembered to call out hate, ADL stood there. Ben stood there with Roy after the violence in Birmingham in 1963. Throughout the decades, we fought back against efforts to reduce access to the polls and restrict voting rights. We have worked together on anti-lynching laws, school desegregation, lobbied for criminal justice reform, pushed for changes in sentencing guidelines, and we will keep up the fight because complacency is not an option. We must continue to protect those who promote hatred and violence. We will continue to speak out against racism and anti-Semitism wherever and whenever it arises. Here in the Philadelphia region, we have begun what is now known as the Black Jewish Alliance of the ADL. This project began when Blaine Stoddart, President and CEO of BFW Group, approached our local leadership after attending an ADL event. I won't go into details as Blaine himself will tell you the history and projects of this very important initiative. We must all recognize that we are living in a moment when those in our country, those who hate blacks, who hate Jews, who hate anyone different from them, feel emboldened. They feel empowered. They seek an ADL has been fighting for so many years. And that is why our work is not yet done. And that is why we have created the Black Jewish Alliance.
Thank you, Alan. It is now my pleasure to ask Mayor Jim Kenney up to say a few words.
Good afternoon, everyone. It's obviously been a year since we saw that despicable display of hatred and bigotry down in Charlottesville. As mayor, I want to remind everyone that Philadelphia prides itself on diversity and inclusion. We have absolutely zero tolerance for all forms of hate and discrimination. When we see such acts, we must continue to speak out and condemn them. I was absolutely sickened by what I saw in Charlottesville last August, and it was a painful reminder that racism and anti-Semitism are unfortunately still prevalent in our society today, especially under this administration. And I'm proud to stand, not this administration, that administration. I am proud to stand with the ADL and all of you in fighting back against hate and securing justice and fair treatment for all. I want to take the opportunity to recognize Blaine Stoddart, founder of the Black Jewish Alliance of the ADL, and Alan Gubernick, ADL Board Chair, for their leadership in standing up against bigotry in all forms. And I want to thank you all for being here today, and let us continue to speak up for the values of acceptance and inclusiveness. And just want to say that I grew up in South Philadelphia around 4th and Snyder. It was a 2/3 Irish Catholic, 1/3 Jewish community with African-American folks about a block or so away. There was really some difficult times back in the 60s when I was growing up, and I remember that 1968 being one of the worst years I can remember. And I haven't felt that unstable or unsecure for that time until now. And I find the same. I can't imagine what a Holocaust survivor must have thought watching the tiki torches of Charlottesville and listening to what they were spouting off about. I can't imagine that you would think you were safe, that you would feel secure in your own home or in your own community. And I've known Holocaust survivors, and I've spoken to them, and I've seen their tattoos and their numbers, and grew up with those folks. And my life and myself are better as a result of having experienced people like that, and people who have been resilient and have been able to survive one of the worst atrocities in human history. Despite the rhetoric, despite what's happening in Washington, despite what the president espouses almost every single day at these crazy rallies that he goes to, we here in Philadelphia and in other cities across the country will stand strong against that hatred and bigotry, and we will not let it happen again, and we will fight back to our last breath. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Kenney. One of the things that the mayor did not discuss was that immediately after Charlottesville happened, the Anti-Defamation League and the United States Conference of Mayors partnered to develop a 10-point mayor's compact to combat hate. And Mayor Kenney was one of the very first people to sign on to that compact. So thank you very much. Thank you for your partnership, and thank you for your leadership. I would now like to invite Blaine Stoddart to say a few words.
Good afternoon. My name is Blaine Stoddart. I'm just a big mouth. I went to the ADL with an idea, but before I even go any further, I've heard my name called a couple of times. I want anyone who is part of the Black Jewish Alliance to please stand and give them a hand. Robyn, I know I'm off script already, so let me just jump in. Thank you, Robyn, and thank you, Mayor, for your very important, and Alan, for your very important comments. A couple of years ago, I'm thinking it was 2016, I attended my first ADL event and heard Nancy Barron-Beer, Regional Director, speak. She spoke about how 9 years ago we seemed to be entering a post-racial society. However, today in 2018, we see a fully swollen river overflowing its banks with racism and anti-Semitism. News reports continue to reveal despicable acts at local schools, at our local schools, including blacks being called cotton pickers, Hail Hitler salutes, swastikas, students yelling white power in hallways, and the targeting of blacks and Jews on social media. It was these incidents that led us to approach the ADL and to offer to help organize leadership in the black and Jewish communities to stand together against the twin evils of racism and anti-Semitism. The events last year in Charlottesville happened after we'd already begun working together. These events, again, serve to cement our values and our understanding of the needs for us to stand together as allies. One of the first projects we worked on is called Sharing Our Stories, Sharing Ourselves. This program was conceived by Randy Boyette, ADL Senior Associate Director of Education, and Tiffany Newmis, who just got a new job, and so Tiffany's not here. She's now over at Comcast as the Senior Manager for Town Hall and Campus Programming at Comcast. We have held this program, Sharing Our Stories, Sharing Ourselves, in a few houses of worship, most recently in collaboration between Congregation Beth Orr and Bethlehem Baptist Church. Is it Bethlehem? Bethlehem Baptist Church. Together, these two communities recently hosted one of our programs. In our audience today, we have Rabbi Jason Bonder. Is Rabbi here? Thanks for coming, Rabbi. And Reverend Stephen Holloman. Good to see you, Reverend. Pastor Kwan could not make it today. Okay, that's great. He's the pastor of Bethlehem. This program inspires people to get to know each other by sharing a challenging or negative story based on being black or Jewish, and the immediate results have been amazing in terms of open communication. They share a negative story and a positive story, and we share that, and then we have breakout groups. Amazing results, as it relates to communication between the black and Jewish community, right on the spot. It was Martin Luther King who said, "We fail to get along because we fear each other. We fear each other because we don't know each other, and we don't know each other because we've never communicated with each other." He also said on more than one occasion, "If you can't fly, run. If you can't run, walk. If you can't walk, crawl. But whatever you do, keep moving forward." We now live in a time where the forward progress that we have made as a nation, as the mayor said, is now in jeopardy of being taken away by the stroke of a pen or with the appointment of one more justice of the Supreme Court. The Black-Jewish Alliance is an attempt to continue to move our nation forward. If you can't join with us, then you can support us by speaking up against racism and anti-Semitism whenever and wherever it raises its ugly head. You can join us by exercising your franchise and not being like the 61% of Americans who don't vote. You can join us by going back to your job today, going back to your mosque, going back to your synagogue, going back to your temples and churches, and working to make your community a better place. But whatever you do, keep moving forward. Thank you very much.
So you can understand why we are so grateful that Blaine approached the ADL for this project, and why it is so successful is because of Blaine and Alan's leadership. So Blaine mentioned sharing our stories, sharing ourselves. And we'd like to demonstrate that program for you very briefly. We're going to have Steve Mendelsohn and James Elam come up and share their stories. What you will not see is the whole entire program. You'll see them share their stories, but you will not see how the program unfolds with breakout groups and the conversations that usually that have been held among the participants. So we invite any clergy who would like to host this program to contact the ADL. We would be very happy to bring it out to your community. So I'd now like to invite James and then Steve to share their stories.
Good afternoon, everyone. As you mentioned, sharing our stories and ourselves was about really digging into our collective histories and talking about the similarities that we share from our respective experiences. So for my opportunity to share, I thought that I would share a story that I experienced as a young man here in Philadelphia, and it really kind of brought me to mind of the recent Rittenhouse activity with the gentleman who got stabbed. You know, as a young college student, I was home with some of my friends, and we were riding in my car. Two of my fraternity brothers, they went to Temple University, I went to University of Delaware. And we were riding along 63rd Street as kids do. We're just enjoying the summer air, and suddenly we were surrounded by 7 police cars, lights and guns drawn. And we wound up outside of the car, frisked, car searched, and going through an entire process. And the reality is, they finally admitted to us after it was all over that they just pulled us over because they spotted 3 black men in a car wearing baseball hats. I don't even like hats, but I just happened to have on a stupid hat that day, and that got me and my friends pulled over and yanked out of the car at gunpoint. And when I was sharing that story with some of the members of the Black and Jewish Alliance, the response was pretty commonly, "How did it make you feel?" And I told them, I said, I really didn't feel anything. That was relatively normal to me. You know, I grew up in Philadelphia, and that's not something that I wasn't used to. It's not the first time I've had guns pulled on me by the police. It's just, unfortunately, it's a relatively common occurrence that people have to face. And so, that's, my quote-unquote sad story of being a black man in America. But for my quote-unquote happier story, I thought I'd really touch on a much more current event. In that recently we saw a man named LeBron James decide to take his talents and invest them into the educational space. And for me, seeing someone who came from as low as a situation as you can get, you know, being a man from a poor family, a single-parent home, really make it somewhere very successful, have an opportunity to really take himself to an opportunity. He's really the best recognized athlete in the world. And when he gets the spotlight on him, he moves to Los Angeles. His first move is to make sure that everyone understands that he really cares about the community and invests there, and he puts his heart and his soul and his mind there. And to me, that's really inspiring. I think that it shows the real soul of what it means to me to be an American, a black man in America, that, you know, we all have a responsibility to each other to help. And that's why we're here today, to be part of the collective and be part of a group that sees the country go forward. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Steve Mendelsohn. I'm a patent attorney here in Philadelphia and a longtime ADL board member. I grew up in Reading, Pennsylvania, out in Berks County, where my dad was an OBGYN. And he came home and told us a story one day over dinner about a new patient of his that had come into his office, and she was looking at him from left and right, looking at him. He said, what? And she said, I was looking for your horns. Because there's an old anti-Semitic legend that Jews, like the devil, have horns. And I asked my dad, I said, Dad, did you throw her out of your office? And he said, no. He said, look, no horns. So that's one story, one reaction. When I was in high school, one of my classmates, Jim Gehringer, came up to me and said, Steve, you know, you and Ira, one of our other classmates, you and Ira are the only two Jews I like. And I thought it was a compliment. And it wasn't until later, and it might have been years later, that I realized that it might have been a compliment, but it was a compliment from an anti-Semite. When I went off to college at the University of Michigan, a bunch of us were throwing a football around in the courtyard next to our dorm, and we looked up, this was like the first week of school, we looked up and through a window at the dorm, and there one of our classmates, Mark Hoheisel, had hung a huge Nazi flag. And I would have ignored it, but Lee Cohen of Long Island grabbed us, took us to Mark's room, banged on the door, and made Mark take that flag down. And he explained how insulting it was and how offensive it was. And I was more shocked, frankly, that day by Lee Cohen's reaction than I was by Mark Hoheisel's. And it dawns on me over the years that those reactions were appropriate. My dad's non-confrontational reaction in his situation was an appropriate reaction, and Lee Cohen's in that situation with his confrontational reaction was also appropriate. And they were each learning experiences for the perpetrator of the anti-Semitism, and frankly, a growing experience for me. And I hope the next time I see Jim Gehringer, I can have him have a learning experience and me have another growing experience. One of the things that makes me proud about being Jewish is being involved in an organization, a quote-unquote Jewish organization, that is not just about Jews. The Anti-Defamation League has been explained, has had a dual mission throughout its over 100-year history of confronting and stopping the defamation of the Jewish people, but also securing justice and fair treatment to all. And the Black Jewish Alliance is a perfect example of the ADL striving for both of those dual mission goals at the same time. Thank you.
Thank you, James and Steve. Thank you for sharing your stories. Sometimes that's really difficult. Our work is not yet done. It is up to us, each and every one of us who has a voice and a platform, to share our stories and to share our views. Until every single one of us is safe and free from harassment and discrimination, none of us will be free from it. If you'd like more information, please call the ADL office. There's information in the press kits, but our number is 215-568-2223, or email me at rburstein@adl.org. There are contact sheets in the press kits. In the press kits, there's a lot of information about what ADL is doing right now to fight anti-Semitism and racism. Our new interactive heat map that just came out today, as well as the Mayor's Compact and other information. So please feel free to use that and ask any of us any questions as we close up. Thank you very much for coming.